The deep space scanner on the Velothi warship Void Whisper made a soft beeping sound. Commander Thexara looked up from her command chair. Her four eyes focused on the main screen as it showed a new contact. "What is that?" she asked. Science Officer Velthak checked his instruments twice before answering. "Unknown vessel, Commander. It appears to be drifting near the edge of the Kepler 442 system." Thexara stood up. Her tall gray body moved with the grace that all Velothi possessed. For 3,000 years, her people had ruled this part of space. They were strong, smart, and feared by every other species they had met. Nothing surprised them anymore. "Show me," she ordered. The main screen changed. It now showed a strange ship floating in the darkness of space. The vessel looked damaged. Black marks covered its hull. Pieces of metal drifted around it like dead leaves. "Scan it," Thexara said. "Already doing that, Commander," Velthak replied. His fingers moved quickly over his control panel. The ship is approximately 800 meters long. It has basic fusion drives and what looks like primitive armor plating. Thexara walked closer to the screen. The ship looked rough and ugly compared to the smooth curves of Velothi vessels. It had sharp angles and thick plates of metal. Gun barrels stuck out from its sides like teeth from a predator's jaw. "Any life signs?" she asked. "Yes, Commander. About 200 beings. Their life signs are weak but stable. The ship's power is failing," Thexara nodded. This was interesting. They had found a new species. A primitive one by the look of their technology. The Velothi Consortium would want to know about this. "Commander," Velthak said, his voice worried. "I'm reading weapon signatures all over that ship. Many weapons. What kind of weapons? Kinetic projectile systems, missile launchers, energy weapons. Commander, this ship has more weapons than some of our battle cruisers." Thexara laughed. It was a sound like metal scraping on stone. Primitive species always put too many weapons on their ships. They don't understand that technology wins wars, not brute force. She walked back to her command chair. "What else can you tell me about them?" Velthak worked at his station for several minutes. "The ship appears to be called the Iron Resolution. I'm detecting distress signals in an unknown language. Wait." He paused and adjusted his controls. "My translation system is starting to work. The signals are asking for help." "Help?" Thexara's voice showed her amusement. "How pathetic. A warrior race that calls for help when their ship is damaged. Should we respond, Commander?" Thexara thought about this. The Velothi had rules about first contact with new species. They needed to learn about them before deciding if they were useful or dangerous. A damaged ship with weak aliens inside seemed like a perfect chance to study these new beings. "Open a channel," she ordered. The communication officer, a young Velothi named Kexvol, worked at his controls. "Channel open, Commander. Unknown vessel, this is Commander Thexara of the Velothi ship Void Whisper. We have received your distress call. Do you require assistance?" For a moment there was only static. Then a voice came through the speakers. It was deep and rough, speaking in the alien language that their computers were slowly learning to translate. "This is Captain Kang Dae-ho of the UES Iron Resolution. We have suffered damage from hostile forces. Our life support systems are failing. We would be grateful for any assistance you can provide." The voice sounded tired but strong. Thexara found this interesting. Even when asking for help, this alien captain sounded like a warrior. "We will help you, Captain Kang Dae-ho," she replied. "Prepare to be scanned." "Understood. Thank you for your assistance." Thexara turned to Velthak. "Begin a full deep scan of their vessel. I want to know everything about these humans. Their technology, their culture, their military capabilities. Everything." "Yes, Commander. Beginning deep scan now." The Void Whisper's powerful scanners reached out across space. They touched the human ship like invisible fingers, probing every part of it. The scanners could see through metal and read computer files. They could count the crew and measure their weapons. Nothing could hide from a Velothi deep scan. Thexara watched the data flow across her screens. The human ship was indeed primitive by Velothi standards. Their computers were slow and simple. Their weapons used old technology. Their armor was thick but basic. How disappointing, she said to herself. Another weak species. But as the scan went deeper, strange things began to appear on the screens. The humans had files and records that seemed very old. Their computer databases were huge, filled with information that went back thousands of years. "Commander," Velthak said, his voice uncertain, "this is odd. These humans seem to have very detailed records of warfare and conflict. Very detailed." "All species have wars," Thexara replied. What makes theirs special? The amount of data, Commander. And the variety. They have records of thousands of different types of weapons and tactics. Some of these methods are... He paused, looking confused. Some of these are very creative. Thexara became more interested. Show me. Velthak put some of the human files on the main screen. They showed pictures of weapons and battles. The images were old and grainy but clear enough to understand. These humans seem to have been fighting wars for their entire history, Velthak explained. But look at this, Commander. These are not wars between different species. These are humans fighting other humans. Thexara leaned forward in her chair. This was unusual. Most species fought wars against aliens, not their own kind. Internal conflicts happened, but not on this scale. How long have they been fighting these wars? She asked. Velthak checked his readings. According to their records, tens of thousands of years, Commander. They have never stopped fighting. And now they appear to be united under something called the Terran Commonwealth. But their military records suggest they have taken all that experience in fighting each other and turned it towards space exploration and defense. Thexara felt a small chill run through her body. A species that had spent its entire history perfecting warfare was different from the usual primitive aliens they encountered. Continue the scan, she ordered. I want to know more about these humans. Yes, Commander, but... Velthak hesitated. Should we be more careful? If they have been fighting wars for so long, they might be dangerous. Thexara laughed again, but this time it sounded less confident. They're asking us for help, Velthak. Their ship is damaged and their crew is weak. How dangerous can they be? As if to answer her question, the scan results began showing more details about the human ship. The weapons were not as primitive as they first appeared. The armor was made from materials that the Velothi computers could not identify. The reactor design was simple but very efficient. Most strange of all, the ship seemed to be designed for one purpose: fighting other ships and winning. Commander, Velthak said quietly, I think we need to look at this data more carefully. These humans might not be what they seem. Thexara stared at the screen showing the human ship. It still looked damaged and helpless, floating in space like a wounded animal. But now she was beginning to wonder if the animal was really as wounded as it appeared. Continue the scan, she said, and prepare a boarding party. I want to see these humans for myself. Science Officer Velthak worked through the night cycle, going through the massive amount of data the scanners had pulled from the human ship. The Void Whisper was quiet, except for the soft hum of its engines and the clicking of his claws on the control panel. At first, everything seemed normal. The humans had the usual collection of scientific knowledge, cultural records, and technical manuals that any space-traveling species would carry. But as Velthak dug deeper into their historical files, he began to find things that made his four stomachs feel sick. The first file he opened was labeled World War I. Velthak expected to read about a conflict between humans and some alien enemy. Instead, he found records of humans fighting humans. The numbers made him read the file 3 times to make sure his translation system was working correctly. 17 million dead. In just 4 years, Velthak had studied many species during his career. The Velothi themselves were considered a warrior race. They had fought wars for centuries to build their empire, but their biggest war had killed maybe 50,000 beings over 20 years. These humans had killed 17 million of their own kind in 4 years. He opened another file. World War II. This one was worse. Much worse, 85 million dead. Cities turned to ash by weapons that used the power of stars. Entire populations rounded up and killed in organized programs of murder. Industrial facilities built for the single purpose of killing people as efficiently as possible. Velthak's hands shook as he read. The Velothi had always thought they understood violence. They fought with honor and strength. They conquered planets and enslaved weaker species, but they had never done anything like this. The humans had not just killed their enemies. They had studied killing. They had made it into a science. They had built machines whose only purpose was to end life in new and horrible ways. But these were just 2 wars. As Velthak continued reading, he found more and more conflicts. The Crusades, the Mongol invasions, the Napoleonic Wars, the Vietnam conflict. Each one showed humans finding new ways to hurt and kill each other. By the time the ship's day cycle began, Velthak had read about hundreds of human wars. His eyes burned and his mind felt numb. He had seen so much death and violence that the numbers had stopped meaning anything to him. Commander, Texara found him still at his station when she arrived for the morning shift. "Report," she ordered. Velthak looked up at her. His face was pale and his eyes were wide. "Commander, we have made a terrible mistake." "What do you mean?" "These humans, they are not like other species. They are not primitive. They are something else entirely." Texara sat down in her command chair. "Explain." Velthak put the human historical data on the main screen. For the past 50,000 years, humans have been in a constant state of warfare. Not wars against alien invaders or natural disasters, wars against other humans. The screen showed images from human conflicts, pictures of battles, weapons, and destruction. Some of the images were so violent that even the hardened Velati crew looked away. "Look at these numbers, Commander," Velthak continued. "In their war called World War II, they killed more beings than the total population of 3 Velati worlds. And they did it in 6 years. Texara studied the images on the screen. She had seen violence before, but nothing like this. The humans had found ways to kill that the Velati had never imagined. "But this is impossible," she said. "If they spent so much time killing each other, how did they survive as a species?" "That's what makes them so frightening, Commander. They survived because they are very good at killing. They have turned violence into an art form. Look at this." Velthak showed her files about human weapons development. Chemical weapons that could kill thousands of people with a single shell. Biological weapons that turned the body's immune system against itself. Nuclear weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. Each time they invented a new way to kill, other humans invented ways to defend against it, Velthak explained. This created a cycle where they kept making better and better weapons, and better ways to use them. Texara felt cold despite the warm air on the ship's bridge. "You are saying they have been fighting a war for 50,000 years?" "Yes, Commander. But worse than that. Look at these tactical manuals." The screen showed human military doctrine, plans for fighting in every possible environment. Space, underwater, in poisonous atmospheres, on worlds with different gravity. The humans had thought of everything. "They have strategies for fighting enemies they have never met," Velthak said. "They have weapons designed to work against technology they have never seen. They plan for wars that might happen hundreds of years in the future." Lieutenant Jiwan, the human communications officer whose file they had downloaded, appeared on the screen. Her service record showed she had fought in something called the Asteroid Belt Campaign. "This female has personally killed 47 enemy soldiers in hand-to-hand combat," Velthak read. "She is considered an average soldier by human standards." Texara stared at the image of the young human woman. She looked normal, even weak by Velati standards, but according to her file, she had killed more enemies than most Velati warriors would face in their entire lives. "Show me more," Texara ordered. Velthak brought up files about human society and culture. "The strangest thing, Commander, is that despite all this violence, they have somehow learned to work together. Their current government, this Terran Commonwealth, includes billions of humans from hundreds of different worlds. How is that possible? I think they finally realized that fighting each other was stopping them from fighting everyone else." The words hung in the air like a threat. Texara understood what Velthak meant. The humans had not stopped being violent. They had just pointed their violence in a new direction. "What else did you find?" she asked. "Their technology is not as primitive as we thought," Velthak replied. "Yes, it looks simple compared to ours, but it is designed by beings who have spent 50,000 years trying to kill each other. Every human innovation has been tested in actual combat." He showed her files about human ship design. "Look at this, Commander. Human ships are not built for exploration or trade. They are built to fight and survive. Every system has backup systems. Every weapon has multiple ways to aim and fire. They design their ships assuming that everything will go wrong and enemies will try to destroy them." Texara looked at the image of the human ship Iron Resolution floating damaged in space. She had thought it looked primitive and ugly. Now she realized it looked like what it was. A weapon designed by a species that understood war better than anyone else in the galaxy. "Commander," Velthak said quietly, "there is something else. I found records of their recent expansion into space. In just 200 years, they have colonized over 300 worlds. They have fought and won wars against space pirates, rebel colonies, and something called the Corporate Alliance." "How many wars?" Velthak checked his files. 17 major conflicts and hundreds of smaller ones. "They have never lost a war, Commander." Texara stood up from her chair and walked to the main screen. The image of Captain Kang Daeho appeared. He looked tired and hurt, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. "This captain, what do we know about him?" "He is a veteran of something called the Titan Rebellion," Velthak replied. "He has commanded ships in 43 combat missions. His personal combat record shows 218 confirmed enemy kills." Thexara felt her blood turn cold. The human captain lying wounded in his damaged ship had personally killed more beings than she had even seen in combat. "Commander," Velthak said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I don't think we found a primitive species that needs our help. I think we found something much worse." "What do you mean?" "I think we found humanity." Tactical analyst Korvex had always prided himself on understanding enemy capabilities. For 15 years he had studied the military records of dozens of species. He could predict how they would fight, what weapons they would use, and how to defeat them. But as he read through Captain Kang Daeho's personal files, he began to realize he understood nothing about warfare at all. The human captain's service record started when he was 18 years old. That was young, even by human standards. But what made Korvex's skin crawl was not the captain's age when he started fighting. It was how good he had become at it. Daeho's first assignment was on a ship called the UES Determination. It was sent to help put down something, called the Titan Rebellion. Korvex read the mission briefings and felt sick. The rebellion had started when human miners on Saturn's Moon Titan decided they wanted independence from Earth. The Terran Commonwealth said no. What followed was 3 years of the most brutal fighting Korvex had ever read about. The rebels had hidden in the methane storms of Titan's surface. The environment was so hostile that most species would have declared the moon impossible to fight on. The storms could freeze a being solid in seconds. The atmosphere was poison. The pressure could crush normal equipment. The humans fought there anyway. Korvex read Daeho's personal log entries from the Titan campaign. The young human wrote about leading boarding parties onto rebel mining ships, not with advanced weapons or superior technology, but with magnetic boots, cutting torches, and what humans called determination. In one entry, Daeho described fighting hand-to-hand with rebel miners in a cargo bay, while the ship was falling toward Titan's surface. The artificial gravity had failed. The air was leaking out through holes in the hull. Any sane being would have retreated. Daeho and his squad had stayed to finish the mission. "We couldn't let them crash the ship into the processing facility," he had written. "Too many civilians down there." "So we kept fighting." Yunho lost his helmet when a rebel hit him with a wrench, but he kept going. Said the methane atmosphere wasn't that bad compared to the recycled air on military ships. Korvex read that passage 3 times. The human had made a joke about breathing poison gas while fighting for his life. But this was just one mission. As Korvex continued reading, he found dozens more. Each one showed the same pattern. Humans faced with impossible situations who found ways to win anyway. During the Jupiter-Moon Wars, Daeho had commanded a small patrol ship that was attacked by 3 rebel cruisers. His ship was outgunned and outnumbered. The smart thing would have been to run away. Instead, Daeho had flown his ship into the gravity well of Io, using the volcanic moon's magnetic field to hide from enemy sensors. Then he had waited for the rebel ships to follow him. When they did, he used the moon's volcanoes as weapons. He fired missiles into the lava flows, causing eruptions that damaged 2 of the rebel ships. Then he attacked the 3rd one while its crew was distracted by the volcanic explosions. The mission report was written in the same calm tone that Daeho used for everything. Like turning a moon into a weapon was just another day at work. Subject neutralized 3 enemy vessels using improvised volcanic bombardment, the report said. No friendly casualties. Recommend promotion to Lieutenant Commander. Korvex stopped reading and looked around the bridge of the Void Whisper. His fellow Velothi were going about their normal duties. They had no idea what they had found floating in space. He went back to the files. Daeho's career continued with more impossible victories. The Asteroid Belt campaign, where he led a squadron of fighters through a field of spinning rocks while being chased by pirates. The Europa Ice War, where he spent 2 months fighting in tunnels carved into a frozen moon. Each mission showed the same thing. Humans who treated deadly environments and overwhelming odds like minor inconveniences. But it was not just Daeho. Korvex began reading the files of other crew members on the Iron Resolution. Every single one had a combat record that would terrify a Velothi general. Lieutenant Jiwan, The communications officer had fought in 17 ground battles during the Mars Independence War. Her file showed that she was an expert in something called urban warfare. Korvax looked up what that meant and immediately wished he had. Not urban warfare was fighting in cities, not just attacking military targets, but fighting house by house, room by room, until one side gave up or died. The humans had developed entire tactical systems for this kind of fighting. G1's personal record showed she had cleared 47 buildings of enemy fighters. The reports described how she and her squad would use explosives to blow holes in walls, then fight their way through apartment buildings and office towers. Neutralized enemy sniper nest on the 34th floor of residential complex, one report said. Used improvised explosive device to access target floor through exterior wall. Eliminated 6 hostiles in close quarters combat. Korvax read that again. The human female had blown a hole in the side of a building 34 floors above the ground, then fought enemy soldiers inside people's homes. Engineer Nam Soo-jin's file was even worse. She was listed as a combat engineer, which Korvax learned meant she was an expert at building things that exploded. Her service record included something called the Siege of New Shanghai. The siege had lasted 8 months. Enemy forces had surrounded a human city on Mars and cut off all supplies. Instead of surrendering, the humans had decided to fight their way out. Soo-jin had been part of a team that built weapons from whatever they could find in the city. Fertilizer bombs, improvised missile launchers made from construction equipment, tunnel systems that let human fighters appear behind enemy lines. Constructed 17 improvised explosive devices using civilian materials, her file said. Devices successfully eliminated enemy armored vehicles and created breach and siege perimeter. The woman had made bombs from garbage and used them to break out of a surrounded city. Korvax realized he was shaking. These were not warriors. Warriors followed rules. Warriors fought with honor. These humans were something else entirely. They were survivors who had learned to kill anything that threatened them. But the most frightening thing was not what they had done. It was how normal it seemed to them. Reading their files was like reading maintenance reports, matter-of-fact descriptions of violence that would give nightmares. To a Velothi shock trooper, Captain Daeho's final mission before the Iron Resolution had been something called Operation Clean Sweep. Human intelligence had discovered a pirate base hidden in an asteroid field. The pirates had been attacking civilian ships for months. Daeho had taken his ship into the asteroid field alone, not because he had no choice, but because he thought one ship could do the job better than a fleet. The mission report showed that he had spent 3 weeks hunting pirates through the asteroids. He used the rocks as cover, ambushing pirate ships when they thought they were safe. He mined the shipping lanes with improvised explosives. He even rammed one pirate cruiser with his own ship, then boarded it while both vessels were spinning out of control. When it was over, the pirate base was destroyed, and 47 enemy ships had been eliminated. Daeho had done it with one ship and a crew of 200 humans who thought this was normal military service. Korvax closed the files and sat back in his chair. He looked at the main screen, which showed the damaged human ship floating in space. Captain Daeho was inside that ship right now. Hurt, maybe dying, but still alive, still dangerous, Commander, Korvax called out. We need to talk. Thexara looked over at him. What did you find? We did not rescue a damaged ship, Commander. We rescued a weapon, and the being who knows how to use it. Chief Engineer Zixtal had been examining alien technology for 20 years. She had studied the elegant energy systems of the Christine Empire, the beautiful bioships of the Harmony Collective, and the massive fortress vessels of the Stone Lords. She thought she had seen every possible way to build a starship. Then she got permission to board the human vessel Iron Resolution, the boarding shuttle attached to the human ship's docking bay, without any problems. The humans had agreed to let a small Velothi team examine their technology while they waited for rescue. Captain Daeho said it would help the two species understand each other better. Zixtal now realized that understanding each other was the last thing the Velothi should want. The first thing she noticed when she stepped onto the human ship was the smell. It was not bad exactly, but it was strange. Metal and oil and something else she could not identify. Later, she realized it was the smell of weapons that had been used recently. The second thing she noticed was how everything was built. Velothi ships were designed to be beautiful and efficient. They had smooth curves and elegant lines. Everything was placed where it would look best while still working well. The human ship looked like it had been built by beings who expected it to be shot at. Every wall was thick and armored. Every corridor had blast doors that could seal off sections of the ship if they were damaged. Every room had multiple ways to get in and out, in case the main entrance was blocked by debris or enemies. "This is not an exploration vessel," Zixtal muttered to herself as she examined the construction. "This is a fortress that happens to fly through space." Engineer Nam Soo-jin met them at the docking bay. She was a small human female with grease stains on her uniform and tired eyes. She looked harmless enough, until Zixtal remembered reading her combat record. "Welcome aboard the Iron Resolution," Soo-jin said through the translation device. "I am sorry about the mess. We have been trying to repair battle damage. The human said it like she was talking about a minor maintenance problem. Soo-jin led them through the ship, pointing out different systems and explaining how they worked. The more Zixtal saw, the more worried she became. The human weapons were not as primitive as they had appeared on the scanners. Yes, they used kinetic projectiles instead of energy beams, but these projectiles were fired at incredible speeds using magnetic acceleration systems that the Velathi had never seen before. "This is our main gun," Soo-jin explained, leading them to a massive chamber in the ship's forward section. "It fires a depleted uranium slug at 15% of light speed." Zixtal stared at the weapon. It was huge, taking up 3 full decks of the ship. But what frightened her was not its size. It was how simple it was. Velathi energy weapons were complex devices that required careful calibration and constant maintenance. This human weapon was basically a giant magnet that threw metal very, very fast. It was crude, but it would work in almost any conditions. "How much damage does it do?" Zixtal asked. Soo-jin smiled. It was not a happy expression. "At full power, it can punch through 3 meters of standard battle armor. The kinetic energy alone is enough to crack a moon." Crack a moon. The human engineer said it like she was describing the weather. They moved on to see the ship's defensive systems. Again, Zixtal was surprised by how different the human approach was from what she expected. Velathi ships used energy shields to deflect incoming fire. The human ship had armor. Lots and lots of armor. But it was not just thick metal plates. The armor was made from layers of different materials, each one designed to stop a specific type of weapon. "The outer layer absorbs energy weapons," Soo-jin explained. "The middle layer is designed to deflect kinetic projectiles. The inner layer contains the damage if something gets through the first 2. "What if all 3 layers are penetrated?" Zixtal asked. "Then we have backup armor behind that, and backup systems behind the backup armor, and backup crews to operate the backup systems." Zixtal realized the humans did not just plan for things to go wrong. They expected everything to go wrong at the same time. The ship's computer systems were the same way. Most species used centralized computer networks that controlled everything from one location. It was efficient and easy to maintain. The human ship had dozens of separate computer systems that could operate independently. If the main computer was destroyed, the backup computers could take over. If those were destroyed, there were backups. "Why so many?" Zixtal asked. "In combat, enemy ships try to disable your computers with viruses or electronic warfare," Soo-jin replied. "If we lose our main systems, we can still fight using manual controls and backup networks. Electronic warfare." Zixtal had never heard the term before, but she could guess what it meant. The humans had not just learned to fight with weapons and ships. They had learned to fight with information and computer systems. Soo-jin showed them the ship's medical bay, and Zixtal's fear grew even stronger. The medical facilities were more advanced than anything the Velathi had. But they were not designed just to heal people. They were designed to put wounded soldiers back into combat as quickly as possible. "Our medical systems can perform surgery during battle conditions," Soo-jin explained. "Even if the ship is spinning or under acceleration, we can still treat injuries and get crew members back to their stations." The medical bay also had something that made Zixtal's stomach feel sick. In one corner was a section marked with warning signs in the human language. "What is that area?" she asked. Soo-jin looked uncomfortable for the first time. "That is for interrogating prisoners. If we capture enemy personnel, we can question them there." Interrogation, another human word that Zixtal was beginning to hate. But the worst discovery came when they visited the ship's mess hall. It looked normal enough, tables and chairs where the crew could eat their meals. But Soo-jin showed them something that made no sense. In an emergency, the food preparation systems can synthesize chemical weapons, she said casually. If we are boarded by enemy forces, we can flood sections of the ship with gas that will disable or kill intruders. Zixtal stared at the innocent-looking food machines. You can turn your kitchen into a weapon? Everything on this ship can be turned into a weapon, Sujin replied. That is how human ships are designed. As they walked back toward the docking bay, Zixtal's mind was spinning. She had always thought the Velothi were advanced because their technology was elegant and sophisticated. But the humans had built something much more frightening. They had built technology that worked. It did not matter if it was pretty or elegant. It only mattered if it could kill enemies and keep the crew alive while doing it. Engineer Su Jin, Zixtal said as they reached the docking bay. May I ask you a question? Of course. Your ship. The Iron Resolution. What class of vessel is it in your fleet? Sujin looked surprised by the question. This is a light escort cruiser. It is one of our smaller combat vessels. Zixtal felt cold fear wash over her. Everything she had seen, the massive weapons, the incredible armor, the backup systems for the backup systems. This was one of their smaller ships. What do your larger ships look like? She asked. Sujin smiled again, and this time Zixtal could see why other species were afraid of humans. Would you like me to show you some pictures? Sujin asked. We have files on our dreadnoughts and battle carriers, though I think some of the images might be disturbing to non-human viewers. Zixtal shook her head quickly. No, thank you. I think I have seen enough. As they returned to the Void Whisper, Zixtal thought about what she had learned. The humans were not just a violent species. They were a species that had turned violence into a science. Every part of their technology was designed by beings who had spent thousands of years learning the best ways to break things and kill people. And now they had turned all that knowledge toward building spaceships. Commander, she said as soon as she reached the bridge, we have a serious problem. What kind of problem? Thexara asked. The kind where we just announced our location to a species that builds moon-cracking weapons on their escort ships and thinks that is normal. Captain Kang Daeho opened his eyes slowly. His head hurt and his mouth tasted like metal, but he was alive. The medical bay of the Iron Resolution was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his ribs where a piece of debris had hit him during the pirate attack, but he was a human, and humans had learned long ago that pain was just information. It told you that you were hurt, not that you should give up. Computer, he said quietly. Status report. The ship's computer responded in its calm, mechanical voice. Life support at 60%. Main engines offline. Weapon systems operational but limited power. Foreign vessel detected at range of 2 kilometers. Foreign vessel. That brought back memories. The aliens who had found them. The ones calling themselves Velothi. Have they attempted to board? Daeho asked. Yes, Captain. Engineering reports that a small team examined ship systems approximately 4 hours ago. No hostile actions detected. Daeho nodded carefully. The aliens seemed friendly enough, but 200 years of human expansion into space had taught him to be suspicious of everyone until proven otherwise. Computer. Did our new friends conduct any deep scans of ship systems? Affirmative. Full spectrum analysis detected. All databases were accessed. Daeho smiled despite his injuries. The Velothi had scanned his ship and downloaded all its files. That meant they now knew exactly what they were dealing with. The question was whether they were smart enough to understand what they had learned. Computer, prepare a standard distress beacon. Include our current position and status. Route it through the alien ship's communication systems. Captain, that will reveal our location to any Terran Commonwealth vessels in the area. I know, Daeho said. Do it anyway. While the computer prepared the message, Daeho slowly got out of the medical bed. His uniform was torn and dirty, but it still carried the insignia of a Terran Commonwealth captain. He had worn that insignia through 17 combat missions and 43 separate engagements. He was not about to let a few broken ribs stop him from doing his job now. The communication panel chimed softly. Message prepared, Captain. Send it. 30 seconds later, the reply came from the alien ship. The translation was rough but understandable. Captain Daeho, this is Commander Thexara. We detected your transmission. Are you requesting rescue from your own people? Daeho activated the communication system. Commander Thexara, thank you for your assistance. Yes, I have contacted the Terran Commonwealth fleet. They will be here soon to collect my ship and crew. There was a long pause before the alien commander replied. How soon? Not long, Deho said. Admiral Park's battle group was conducting exercises in the next system. They should arrive within a few hours. Another pause, longer this time. Captain, may I ask what kind of ships Admiral Park commands? Deho's smile got wider. The aliens were asking the right questions now. Standard battle group commander. 12 heavy cruisers, 4 dreadnoughts, and the carrier Indomitable with her fighter wings. The silence from the alien ship lasted almost a full minute. When Commander Thexara spoke again, her voice sounded different. More careful. That seems like a large force to rescue one damaged ship. Not really, Deho replied. Admiral Park was training his crews for deep space operations. This gives them a chance to practice long-range deployment and rescue procedures. Very efficient. What Deho did not say was that Admiral Park was also one of the most aggressive commanders in the Commonwealth fleet, the kind of man who believed that the best defense was overwhelming firepower, applied at the right time and place. Over the next 3 hours, Deho monitored the communications between his ship and the Velothi vessel. The aliens were getting more and more nervous. They kept asking questions about Commonwealth fleet strength and capabilities. Deho answered all their questions honestly. He told them about human ship designs, weapon systems, and tactical doctrines. He explained how the Commonwealth military worked and what their policies were toward new alien contacts. The more he told them, the quieter they became. Finally, the ship's sensors detected the arrival of Admiral Park's battle group. 18 ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons powered but not targeting anything specific. The flagship Iron Will was a sight that made Deho feel proud to be human. 800 meters of armored death, bristling with enough firepower to sterilize a planet. The other ships in the formation were smaller but no less dangerous. Captain Deho, came a familiar voice over the communication system. This is Admiral Park Minho. Are you in need of assistance? Admiral, good to hear your voice, Deho replied. My ship is damaged but operational. Crew is safe. We have made contact with a new alien species called the Velothi. They have been very helpful. Understood. We will begin recovery operations immediately. Deho switched to the channel that connected him to the Velothi ship. Commander Thexara, I would like to introduce you to Admiral Park Minho of the Terran Commonwealth Fleet. Admiral Park's voice came through the speakers, calm and professional. Commander Thexara, thank you for assisting Captain Deho and his crew. The Commonwealth appreciates your kindness to our people. It was our duty, the alien commander replied. Her voice sounded very small compared to the power of the human fleet now surrounding her ship. Of course, Admiral Park said. I understand your people conducted a scan of Captain Deho's vessel. I hope the information was educational. There was no reply from the Velothi ship. Admiral Park continued in the same friendly tone. I also understand that you now have detailed information about our technology, our military capabilities, and our expansion into this sector of space. Still no reply. That presents us with an interesting situation, Commander. You know about us and now we know about you. The question is what we do with that information. Deho listened to the conversation and felt a familiar feeling in his chest. It was the same feeling he had gotten before every major battle of his career. The moment when diplomacy ended and violence became possible. Admiral Park was not threatening the aliens. He was simply stating facts, but the facts themselves were threat enough. Admiral, Commander Thexara finally said, what are your intentions regarding the Velothi Consortium? That depends entirely on your intentions regarding the Terran Commonwealth, Admiral Park replied. We are peaceful people, Commander. We prefer to trade and explore rather than fight. But we are very good at fighting when we need to be. Deho could see the alien ship on his sensors. It had not moved since the human fleet arrived. Its weapons were powered down and its engines were running at minimum. The aliens were not stupid. They had read the files from his ship. They knew what humans were capable of. And now they had 18 human warships sitting in space around them, waiting to see what would happen next. Admiral, Commander Thexara said, her voice shaking slightly, the Velothi Consortium wishes to establish peaceful relations with the Terran Commonwealth. Excellent, Admiral Park replied. We look forward to learning more about your people. I am sure we can find ways to coexist in this galaxy. The words were friendly, but Deho could hear the meaning underneath them. The humans were willing to be peaceful. but they were also ready to be something else entirely if the situation required it. As recovery ships moved toward the Iron Resolution, Daeho thought about the conversation he had heard. The aliens had started this encounter thinking they had found a primitive species to study or conquer. Now they were desperately trying to avoid a war with beings who treated galactic conquest as a training exercise. "Captain," came Engineer Su-jin's voice over the intercom, "the recovery ships are connecting to our docking bays. We should be ready to transfer to the Iron Will within the hour." "Understood," Daeho replied. "And Su-jin?" "Yes, Captain. Make sure all our files are properly secured before we leave. I have a feeling the Velothi are going to be very interested in learning more about humans. We should make sure they learn the right lessons." Through his window, Daeho could see the alien ship surrounded by human vessels. The Velothi had wanted to know what humanity was capable of. Now they knew. The question was what they were going to do about it.